topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
And welcome to Triversity Talk. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Wendy Stewart, and I'm happy to be here with you on this windy night. Oh my God, I don't believe I said that. I hope everybody is doing really great. It's been a whirlwind of things happening, let me just put it that way, in the past week. And one of the really great things that happened in this past week, we had the Glam Awards in New York City at Sony Hall on Monday night. What made that so special is it really is a dedication to the LGBTQ community, especially drag. And besides sensational performances, costuming, makeup, all of it, it was about community coming together, right? Which is what we believe here at Triversity Talk. And it was very inspiring. One of the things that I just loved about the Glam Awards was there were people there that were dressed in costumes that they created themselves. They were not designers. These are like regular people that came up with amazing ideas for costumes and hair and makeup. And I said to them, you know, are you being nominated for an award? No, they weren't. And I'm like, how did you do this? They said, well, you know, my friend is nominated for an award and I'm here to support them. And I guess that's what the message is, right? We all now have to be here more than ever to support each other. So just think about that for a few minutes. Getting back to Triversity, the Pride Center based in Milford, Pennsylvania. We have started our process of interviewing people for our workshop for I Am What I Am. We have both teenagers and adults that are going to be in this. It's a 6-week project. So you can read more about it if you go online to Triversity, the Pride Center. And I also want to remind you, a lot of people lately have needed to talk. So we are there for you. We have open hours. Again, go to our website. Our open hours are on the website. And you can now visit our Instagram, helmed by the one and only Timothy Moreland. It's chock full of information. And you can also visit us on Facebook, Triversity, the Pride Center. So we are there for you. It's all happening. So our guest tonight is someone I really wanted on the show for a long time. And of course, I had my reasons, but now I really have a reason because he wrote a book that just came out, okay? It's a memoir. It's called Warhol Superstar, Curtis Undressed, okay? And the person who wrote this book is the godchild of Jackie Curtis, the cousin of Jackie Curtis, and the person that is actually keeping the flame of Warhol Superstar, Jackie Curtis, alive. Please welcome to Triversity Talk, Joey Preston. And there you are.
Hi, Wendy.
Hey, there you are. So happy to have you on here. You made it. Everything's working. We haven't had a tornado blow out our audio or our Wi-Fi, so it's all good.
It's all good. It's windy, Wendy, so I'm going to hold on to my hat.
Hold on to your hat, right? Joe, thank you so much for being here. I want to hold the book up and let everybody know they can get this book on Amazon, as well as this is also out now, Jackie Curtis Plays and Poetry. Okay?
Right.
That's 2 books. They're amazing. And for those of you who don't know who Jackie Curtis is, but I know there's many of you who do, I am going to let you take it away, Joe, and give us a little history of your family, who you are, and how you were involved in really being the keeper of the flame for Jackie Curtis.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. That was a beautiful introduction. I really appreciate that. Um,
So,
Jackie is about 12 years older than I was. He became my godfather when I was born, but we were also first cousins simultaneously. So we lived our family lives together, but Jackie, being much older, got the acting bug in his early teens and met Carol Burnett for the first time. So when you meet a big star like that, as a young teenager,
of course.
you're smitten, you know, and you take off.
And
And
I have to tell you, there's a number of people I've had on the show that are in the entertainment field. And when you ask them, especially people that do comedy, when you ask them who really influenced me, Carol Burnett. So this makes sense, right?
yeah, absolutely. He went on from there to go to Art and Design High School, to School of
Okay.
Visual Arts. But he was a very young playwright as well. At the age of 19, in 1966, he wrote Glamour, Glory, and Gold, The Legend of Nola Noonan, Goddess and Star, right? Which just so happened to cast Robert De Niro in his first acting role.
And that's incredible. I know you have an excerpt from it in the book, so if
Yes.
people get the book, they can read it. And, this is what I want to share with my audience. The lines and the language are so rapid fire. So the character development, characters in, characters out, the lines go back and forth so quickly. The content, as an actress, I did a
Right.
reading for you for that show, but it's really overwhelming. And I think I said to you, Joe, how did they learn their lines? How did the actors learn their lines?
Well, Curtis was a Pied Piper. He was the leader, and everybody looked up to him because of his intelligence, his talent, his stature, and how he developed Glamour, Glory, and Gold was having he loved 30s and 40s slapstick movies,
Got it.
and he dolted on those, and he built his plays and his writing on a lot of 30s and 40s films, and he emulated a lot of the actresses that were also in those quick comedies, so to speak, those screwball comedies.
Yeah, there's some screwball comedies. And I have to say, 19 years old, no formal training. And
None.
this person, you're right, Curtis was a Pied Piper, because it seems whoever met him was completely enamored with him. But the fact
Yes.
he had such incredible talent, and he was just a kid growing up on the Lower East Side like you were.
Just like I was.
Yes.
He was a kid in the streets, playing stickball, playing whatever.
Exactly.
He wasn't too much of a sports person, let's put it that way.
Right.
But little by little, when he gained his own intelligence along the way, he was building it very quickly, because he was a child prodigy in a way, and he
Definitely.
wasn't really discovered that way, you see. So it takes the individual to really go out there and make something for themselves.
Absolutely.
And when he wrote the play, he needed a venue to put the play on, you see. So he approached Ellen Stewart at La Mama, but at first she was reluctant to put this type of play on, quite frankly.
Did you think it was his age or the way it was written, the construct of it?
It was once you read the play, which I won't give it away, it's not as appealing today as it once was back then. It has a lot of what's the word for not being insulting to certain people of the society? But you know what I mean. So they got it.
Sarcasm, and there's a lot of double entendres in the words too,
Yes, and you really have to get it.
Right.
But he went to Bastiano's theater, and they let him put the play on there. And that's where Robert De Niro did 10 different roles.
And you know what? We all say Robert De Niro, he is a genius actor, but the fact that he can take a piece like this and do 10 different, I mean, come on, again, being those characters, they were all over the top and all different. And then learning those lines, that's incredible to me. You have to have a certain kind of mind.
Yeah. Well, his family owned a printing store in the neighborhood, and he had heard about the play being produced. So he had come up to the house or wherever Curtis had been staying at the time and said, my family can make the posters for the show. Can I please be in the show?
Can I have a part? I love this story.
Right. So they bartered with each other, and they said, you think you can really do 10 parts? And he said, I'll do anything, you see. So they said, okay, well, let's do it. And that's where he really got his first start on the stage.
But also, I'm thinking this was Jackie Curtis's first big shot out of the bag too. So,
right.
You're talking about a time where people could start out like that. Two kids not rolling in wealth on the Lower East Side, not like now where you have, especially the area you came from. And I do want to talk about that. It's all NYU students now. And they're studying acting at Tisch, where it's, what is it, like $75,000 a year or whatever.
More.
More. You have these two kids, Robert De Niro and Curtis, who they just were creating their own path. It's really quite something when you think about it, because you could do that in those days.
Well, in the 1960s, the cat was out of the bag.
Yeah.
American kids were tired of the status quo, and they came up with their own work, their own look, their own thoughts. Yeah. And, everything was wild in the 60s. We had a lot of politics going on.
Yeah.
And theater, experimental theater especially, was, free range, basically like a free range chicken today.
I swear.
What can I say? It was like anything goes, what I mean? But they did have sold out audiences, night after night after night. And it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling.
Amazing. So would you say that was prior to that time? What was Curtis doing? And this will take us a little bit into your family and what they were doing. He was working at your grandmother's bar?
Well, that was afterwards.
Okay.
He didn't start working in my grandmother's bar until after Warhol let go of the quote unquote drag queens from the factory.
Got it. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about your family. We have a Lower East Side Italian family.
Right.
Tell us about your grandmother.
Well, specifically Sicilian family, which is a little bit different. Way southern Italy. My grandmother was basically born in Sicily, but they came over when she was very young with 7 other children, and she had to make her way in her life,
right?
In this new society.
When she was an immigrant coming to New York,
right?
It was all tenements on the Lower East Side in those days,
Correct. And they settled here on the Lower East Side. And she got married at the age of 13, you see.
Oh, good. I never realized that, Joe. Wow. But that happened in those days.
Yeah. As long as you got permission from the parents had 8 children. And they were like, sure, get out of the house.
I was going to say, right, here's one.
One less mouth to feed. Get out, But she didn't have her first child until she was 16, you see.
That's so that's so amazingly young.
Yeah. But then there were three children after that during the 1920s, you see. The last one being my mother, who was born in January 1st of 1929, right?
Right.
But then what happened at the end of the year, we all know in October, was the Wall Street
Wall Street
crash,
crash, yeah.
right?
My
So
mother
now,
during that time and told me how they were selling apples on the corner. It really affected my mother her entire life.
yeah, right, exactly. Well, when you have certain obligations to feed four young children
Yeah,
during the Depression in 1930s,
exactly.
the husband had to go out to different states to find work, to send money back for the family. And then the mother had to work as well,
Yeah.
while maybe our great grandmother took care of the children.
Or
You
the
see?
eldest. I know in the big families, a lot of times, the eldest kid took care of the younger ones. That's how it used to be.
Yeah, but they were all young during the 1930s, you know? So, the oldest one being 10 years old in the 1930s when the Depression hit.
Amazing.
So yeah. So, whatever she did was learn to run liquor for the mob at the time, you know. And on top of that, she became a taxi dancer in the 1950s after that.
Wow, your grandmother was running liquor for the mob and became a taxi dancer. Can you share with people what a taxi dancer is?
A taxi dancer, it's very similar to what the movie Sweet Charity was about with Gwen Verdon, where women would line up, men would buy tickets when they came in, and they would choose the woman that they wanted to dance with on the dance floor. So they would pay, and then the women would entertain them by having them buy drinks, and this would make money for the house. You see?
And is that where that song 10 Cents a Dance came from?
Absolutely. Yes,
Wow, it's one of
absolutely.
my favorite songs. I never realized 10 cents a dance, that's what they pay me. Gosh, how they weigh me down. My God, your
Yes.
mother was a taxi dancer.
Well, for the younger viewers who are watching this, it's very similar to a Tina Turner song, a line in a Tina Turner song,
Private dance.
where she says, "I'm your private dancer, dancer for money. Do what you want me to do," right? But she kept her mind on the money and her eyes on the ball. You
Yes.
see, so that's for your younger viewers to sort of get a picture of what this was about.
There you go. A little education there. So, your grandmother came up really in hard times and
Very hard times, yeah.
had to really learn how to survive.
Yes, and she was quite tough. She had a heart of gold. You did have to treat her with respect because you treat all Italian grandmothers or mothers with respect. You walked into the bar and you kissed her and said hello, and then whatever conversation ensued. But when you got nasty and out of hand, then there was a problem, especially on the dance floor, you
Wow.
see. So when men got out of hand and they put their hands in the wrong places on their woman's body, my grandmother showed them that they shouldn't have done that.
I love it. And
You
did
know,
that earn her nickname?
it earned her her nickname of Slugger Ann. Yes,
I love
yeah.
I love that her nickname is Slugger Ann.
Yes. She had fists like cured hams to begin with, right?
Those big
So
Sicilian hands.
Sicilian hands, chopping meat and cooking and everything. But yeah, no, men would get drunk and put their hands on different parts of the women's body. And since those places were mafia run,
Right.
there was no calling the cops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no lawsuits, there was no calling cops or anything like that. So she took matters into her own hands. She also belted a couple of her coworkers when they got out of hand as well. So she was a very, very tough woman. She had
Tough
to be.
broad.
Very, very tough. I got to tell you, when she didn't like somebody, she let me know. You
Sure.
know, I would bring a teenage friend of mine in to the bar, and she'd say, "Who's that?" I said, "It's my friend. It's my neighbor. He lives on the block with me. He's a good friend. I grew up with him." She says, "Get rid of him. I don't like him."
Wow.
Just like that. She read people right away because she
Yeah.
worked in that industry.
She
You
read,
know,
she judged, and she kicked him out the door.
Oh, absolutely. She threw
Yeah.
them out the door,
Right.
right onto Second Avenue and 12th Street.
Wow. At what point did she start the family business, the bar called Slugger Ann's?
Well, there was a transition in her marriage where her first husband died in a construction accident,
Oh,
and she transitioned to another husband. And the two of them together opened a luncheonette first,
ah,
uh, just west of Second Avenue, very on that corner building there, on Second Avenue and 12th Street. And after the luncheonette, because she was doing the luncheonette during the day and then working as a taxi dancer at night, you see.
unbelievable.
Um, yeah. And then her cousin named Dominic um, was tired of the bar that he owned at the corner across the street on 12th Street and Second Avenue. So he proposed a sale to my grandmother, you see. Now,
Wow.
this was the same Dominic that's possibly the uncle of three of our great grandmother's great aunts that perished in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire.
Oh my
Also,
God. What a piece of history, Joe. Wow.
you know, yeah. So, um, yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
No,
Um,
no, that's so that every time I talk to you, I find out something new. Um,
and we've
so
known
the
each
fact,
other for years.
you know, Slugger Ann was really ahead of her time. She was a businesswoman and tough as nails, and she went ahead and purchased the corner building and made it into a bar, her bar.
She was reticent at first to purchase the bar. It was in dilapidated condition, and she brought my mother along, and they stood in front of it on Second Avenue. And my grandmother said to my mother, she said, "You think I should buy it?" And my mother was exuberant, and she said, of
Wow,
course, buy it. You know, why are you even thinking of it? And that's
go
what
for it.
propelled her to buy the bar.
Wow.
So she had the liquor license in her name.
What year are we in now?
1956.
So we were in the 50s. She really was ahead of her time. There was no Donna Reed storybook, Honey, I'm Home
No.
existence for her. This is, Lower East Side immigrant and, going out on her own.
Oh, absolutely. She had her new husband, which was sort of a new anchor for her.
That's important.
But her children were branching out into their own careers and doing their own thing. My mother was still working as a taxi dancer, on Union Square and in Times Square. So,
And
yeah.
that's where they had, I guess, these dance halls set up, Union Square and Times Square. Wow.
Yes, because my mother lived diagonally across on Irving Place and 14th Street.
Can't
So
believe
it
it.
was easy for her to just walk
Right.
across the street
Yeah,
to
to go
work,
to work. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Where was Jackie Curtis at this time?
Okay, Jackie was born in 1947. He
Mhm.
was born here in New York City. He was born in Bellevue Hospital um, in February 19th in 1947. Um, her husband, they had been married, is from the South. He was from Tennessee. So he was there setting up their home while she was giving birth here with Curtis, you see.
Wow.
But just about that time, there was a scourge of some kind of disease or something in February of 1947,
Right.
where they had to vaccinate 6 million people.
Wasn't
Uh,
it diphtheria?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think I remember that it was diphtheria. I heard some of these stories. My family, they're gone now, but my family came out at the same time as your family did. I mean, these were, and I got to bring this up, these were the new immigrants to New York trying to find their way. Birth control was out of the question. They all had a bunch of kids. And that's what New York was. It was a tough living in those tenements. They sweltered in the summer. They froze in the winter because you didn't get enough heat. So we have this whole scenario that both you and Jackie you came up in this world.
We came up in this world, and it was transitioning along the way.
Right.
So Jackie's mother, Jean, took Jackie down to Tennessee to live. But it was a short-lived marriage, only 1 year, because the camel that broke the straw that
broke the camel's back.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The straw that broke the camel's back was she went to one of these tent Christian meetings, and the preacher was, fire and brimstone, and he comes running down the aisle, and he points her out, and he points to her in the face, and he says, "Are you a good Christian?" And she says, "No, I'm a Catholic." "Well, you're going straight to hell."
For being a Catholic, right?
And she answered him back, and she said, "No, you are." And there she's holding Curtis at the same time as a baby, less than 1 year old.
Right.
So with that, and coupled with the fact that the marriage didn't work out, she came back to New York City.
It's interesting to me, Joe, when you talk about the women figures in your family, they're also damn strong and opinions, and I don't want to use the word outspoken, that's negative connotation, but they said what was on their mind, and they didn't give a hoot who thought what wonderful, maternal figures for both you and Jackie Curtis, really, to have these strong women around you that kind of, made you toe the line.
Well, our grandmother put the fear of God into all of us.
Right.
Okay. You actually, unless she, clicked into your personality right away,
right,
and didn't have a negative connotation about you, she would like you. Right. But she was doing that basically on feelings and what she knew about people, you see. But she did put the fear of God into everybody. But we got to remember, in Latin families, and especially in Sicilian and Italian families, the firstborn of her son and her grandson can do no wrong. Right. You see. So, she sort of tolerated Jackie when he started doing his drag to a certain degree. She wasn't very happy.
That was going to be my question, because, when reading the book, it seemed like there were a number of times where she was just going to pulverize him and he went running down the street. That happened a lot.
Well, that was a story with our uncle, who had a very short fuse. He was a Marine, right? But he had a very short temper. And Curtis said something really sarcastic to him one day, and he did wind up chasing Curtis down 12th Street toward First Avenue. But Curtis and I was sitting at a table speaking, and this was in 1979 at this point.
So now,
we're having a lovely conversation. Nobody else is in the bar except our grandfather, who's in the back sleeping. And she was behind the bar, doing her bar work, cleaning the glasses, whatever she was doing. And out of nowhere, she just blurts out and yells and said, "Hey, Curtis." And then we both, like soldiers, we went like this and said, "Are you a man or a woman?" And Curtis was like trying to hold back from laughing. And he says, "Well, Nana, I'm a man, of course. Okay, then."
And so, how long had he been doing drag for at that point?
Since the late 60s.
That's what
So
I thought. So now we're into the late 70s, but you're saying Slugger and her firstborn grandchild could do no wrong, and that was Curtis, as long as he
yeah,
answered the question, right?
yeah. She wouldn't lay a hand on him, of course, but I've seen her barrel into the 14th Street apartment and yell at him and say, "What the hell are you doing to my apartment? It's a mess." You
Right.
know, um, because he had things strewn all over the place. She
But
would.
that's what I wanted to ask you. You had my God, Curtis was a superstar, not just a Warhol superstar, a superstar in your family. You had this amazing personality, bigger than life.
Right.
He got married how many times? He was always getting married. How many times did he get married?
Well, just like Elizabeth Taylor, 8 times.
I mean, all of this stuff was going on in a time where people weren't doing this. And yet you
Well,
have this really traditional family who not only it was very obvious how much they loved him
right.
and how much, like your mother, there were passages in there, your mother would go to check on him.
Yeah,
He was
she would bring
family,
me to check up on him as a
right?
wellness check. But I was 8, 9, 10 years old,
And what was
and
your impressions about, going to look at your first cousin, Curtis, your godfather? Why did you have to check on him? What were you feeling at the time?
well, I didn't really know what to feel. I think my mother felt more than I did about what was going on with the drug culture, because it was a very, very heavy drug culture in the 60s and in the 70s, quite frankly. We were inundated. There
Yeah.
wasn't anybody you can talk to down here that wasn't doing some kind of drug from the sublime to the maximum,
No,
you know.
heroin, speedballs. I mean, the Lower East Side was known for that.
Right, exactly. And Curtis's circuit was very heavily involved with that. So when I saw him as a child, strewn out on the bed, passed out, a couple of times, and I told my mother at that age, I said, "Please don't bring me to see this ever again."
It was for you, it was traumatic.
It was traumatic, and I couldn't understand it because we
Yeah,
lived in a very traditional household. You
right.
know, we had furniture in the right place in our apartment. We had lamps where they were supposed to be.
That's
Everything was neat, clean.
That's
We had a
hilarious.
dining room.
That's hilarious. Because
You
what
know,
you wrote in the book, like the places Curtis inhabited, everything was everywhere. There were tangles of arms and legs on the floor of people that had just crashed there. It was complete chaos.
it was chaos. He used to crash with Holly and Candy at the Albert Hotel on
Right.
University and 10th Street. He would crash at all of his friends' house. But he also crashed in the studio above the theater on 12th Street and 2nd Avenue when he had that apartment, you
Right.
see. But that was basically almost known as a shooting gallery at one point, you
Yeah,
see.
that's what they used to call it, actually, a shooting
Yeah,
gallery.
yeah. But this fueled his creativity into writing one show after the other. Then came Vain Victory, then came Lucky Wonderful, then came America Cleopatra with Harvey Firestein in it, you see.
It's
Uh,
just,
you know,
it's incredible to me.
Yeah, Penny Arcade, Patti Smith. These were people that were all close friends like you and I are.
Yeah, around.
Um, yeah, we're in a different time now, but back then,
Well,
you
we're
know,
boring compared to him.
oh my God, they
Like,
would
yeah,
pull it.
we're so boring and cleaned up and safe, and we just do things creatively and inspired. But I think what impresses me, Joe, there was an ilk of person, and you're right, Candy Darling, Jackie Curtis, Hollywood Lawn, that no matter, and I'll mention Penny Arcade, of course, who sustained decades. She's
Right.
completely amazing to me. People that could continue to create work no matter how messed up they were on drugs. Think about that, Joe, really.
Yeah, yeah,
How did
absolutely.
Now somewhere in there, I remember Jackie had a cabaret.
In 1979,
Okay.
he persuaded my grandmother to put on a cabaret show inside the bar. Well, she took a big chance because she didn't have a cabaret license, you see,
I don't
back
think
then.
that would stop Slugger Ann.
Since it was going to be late at night, she didn't think people would be checking up. And at the time, it was $50,000 to obtain a cabaret license. You see, it's not like today. Everything's looser today. So for 4 semi-weeks, Curtis wrote and put on his own show, and it was a sold-out show every night, and I was the waiter.
I love it. Family affair.
There were fights at the door to get in. It was $3 a ticket. My mother was there at the door also. She was like an MC showing people to the tables.
I love that this is such an Italian thing. The whole family was involved.
It was such a mix. And even my uncle was at the door because, he was collecting the money, the one who ran after Curtis, by the way.
Incredible.
It's so strange that the dichotomy of the sensibilities of the different generations were melding together to get something done productively and creatively.
But from what I read about Jackie Curtis, a Pied Piper for sure, but that kind of person is magical, and they have a way of just everything they touch, they make work.
Yes. You see, Jackie was the nucleus. You see, he was a nucleus, and everybody looked up to him, and everybody listened to him. He directed everyone. He might have appointed other people as directors or assistant directors, but what Jackie said went. I heard a recent story about how Vain Victory went on, and it went on like anybody could come onto the stage that he knew. Said, "Oh, do you want to act? Show up tonight at the show," and just come on stage, So it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and by the end of the run, there was about 4 people who were actually in the show and 2 people in the audience, and that ended the show. So it was like, there was no, it wasn't Broadway. Jackie was actually approached by the producers of Hair, who were very good friends with him, right? Who wrote Hair at the same time, right? And they said, "Jackie, we think we can get, your show to come up to Broadway." And Jackie got very, very upset. And he said, "I don't want my show going to Broadway. My show is not about Broadway. My show is about, Jackie would change the lines every night, and you couldn't do that on Broadway, you see." He was very loose. He wanted to be open. He wanted to do what he wanted to do, you see. This also was his personality earlier in life. Sure. When he played Bette Midler's son in Miss Nefertiti Regrets, in Tom Ionen's play. And he was doing this and getting Bette Midler very upset.
Because she wanted the lines to be the way they were.
Yes, exactly. And little by little, Jackie got fired. But, Jackie also got fired from his own play by John Vaccaro, you see. So these people were very powerful in their intent. They had strong wills, really strong wills. And they were going, "Forget you. I don't care. I can do this on my own."
Right. But it's interesting because Jackie's will was just as strong, was
very
not
strong.
going to change who he was or what he was about, was going to do whatever the hell he felt like. And, you can't take it away from him. When I read this, I'm like, wow, what a genius. And that's what I want the takeaway for people to know, that to read this book, because I respect genius, and I certainly respect creative genius. And I mean, it's a shame his life was very short-lived. It was too short. And you know what? I think in the end, his genius did him in. That's what I was thinking.
It really did. He had a very, very high IQ.
Right.
What the number was, I don't know, but it must have busted the charts, right? But I was told by a PR manager who I had become friends with years ago, and she told me Jackie didn't live long enough to become as popular if he wasn't involved with Warhol, you
Right.
see, and didn't do the Warhol films. I said, well, I'm trying to, keep his memory in perpetuity as long as I can, you see. But, this was very difficult for Jackie, to keep rolling in this way. But he became very depressed that he had to uh, reconstruct his career
Yeah.
once the Warhol factory got rid of Holly, Jackie, and Candy, you see.
Well, Andy
So,
disposed of people. I mean, look at the track record of what happened and people that worked with Andy Warhol.
right, exactly.
That was
Well,
his MO, you know?
yeah, it really is. You see, the money was starting to really come in,
Yeah.
you see, and it was about the money. Candy had died in 1974 from a transitioning issue from male to female.
And okay, just 1 second on that. I did not know what Candy died because she had transitioned and the doctor botched something up.
It was very early in the days of doctors experimenting with the type
Right.
of pills that were available. And she was taking them, and people were telling her, stop taking them. She said she would, but she didn't. And it led to her demise, you see. So it's,
Were these
but
hormones?
what?
Were these the early hormones, Joe? Early
These
hormones?
were hormone treatments, whatever she was doing. You know, that is not really recorded because a lot of this stuff just went by the wayside.
Of course.
Whoever was there knew. And if the stories weren't passed down, then they didn't know. One
Right.
who is a real master and is still with us, actually, of this whole zeitgeist, basically, is Augusto Machado and Penny Arcade. You know,
Right. Right.
and they have a tremendous amount of details. Well, yeah, I got to tell you a funny story. So there would be a lot of people up at the loft on 12th Street and 2nd Avenue, just above the theater where Curtis got an apartment through my grandmother because she managed that
Of
building
course.
across the street,
Of course.
right? She collected the rents and all of this kind of stuff. So if there were a lot of people talking, Jackie would go, "Shut up. Lucy is on. This is art." You know, so that was the type of environment. It was very loose. It was like you can go up there 24/7. It didn't matter if people were sleeping or if they were awake or talking or not talking. It was Flotsam and Jetsam. It didn't matter. you know
Wow.
it was just a really loose time, but so were the 1960s.
Right.
When we look back on it, the assassinations and the political parties,
Yeah.
the onslaught of rock and roll that really advanced from the Beatles,
Yeah, but it was
basically.
right, when you think of what was happening in the media, the TV that was yeah, it was like a time of breakthrough, and, I'll use this phrase, "devil may care," people
Right,
were free, they were, saying thing, "I wanna do my thing, whatever your
right,
thing happened to be," so, yeah, it's, you have to when you talk about, like, Jackie Curtis, you have to talk about the political landscape at the time too, and what was going on
sure,
there.
sure. Jackie was an anomaly. You see,
Yeah.
the, there, there was really no boundaries. So he was in the experimental theater world. You see, where anything went. John Vaccaro took them on a trip to do a show out of town, and Jackie was had to go to the bathroom. So he was heading toward the women's bathroom, and he says, "Wait a minute." The person standing there says, "Wait a minute, are you a real woman?" And Jackie says, "Oh, come on, would a real woman dress like this?" You know.
Ah!
So,
There's a
and
million quotes like that,
right, million stories, and Curtis just waltzed into the women's bathroom. You know,
and
he
and
kept
did
going.
did what he wanted to do. I can't believe it, Joe. We've got only 4 minutes left, and I want to
Oh,
get in here. The person that did the film Superstar in a House Dress is really the story of Jackie's life, right?
Craig Heiberger and his
Yep.
husband, Andy LaBarbera, were
Right.
the producer and executive producers. They appointed me associate producer, and I provided a lot of the media that they used in the film. And I have known Craig for 45 years now.
Right.
So we work very well together. And there are a host of people in the film that are still with us today, and some
Amazing.
that are not, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, to take this a step further, people have got to read the book, Jackie Curtis Undressed. And then
Thank you.
the film also to get, I believe in keeping the flame alive too, Joe. And Jackie Curtis, besides being related to you, what an incredible entity. What an incredible human being, right?
Absolutely. I experienced Jackie on many different moods and levels. He must have had 12 different personalities, and I
get that
experienced,
feeling.
multiple personality, if you want to call it disorder. But I've seen him happy.
That's what we call it now.
Yeah, I've seen him happy. I've seen him depressed. I've seen him just regularly sad. But he was very, very happy when he was in tune with his work.
Right.
When he was on the prospect of doing a new project, and I met so many people, including yourself, through this entire zeitgeist over the last 45 years,
Amazing.
that have really propelled my interest. And I wrote the book 4 years ago now, right? But I sat on it for a very long time, until the time I felt was right to bring it out in our new political climate. You see what I mean?
Right.
So,
as is this one, the poetry and plays of Jackie Curtis. I mean, the brilliant content in this book as well. Joe, I know you're related. What is, like, in your heart of hearts, and we're down to the wire here, but please share, what is it that you want people to get from all of this?
I don't want Jackie's life, creativity, and work just to have been blown in the wind.
Thank you.
And forgotten.
Right.
I come to many events. I remind and I represent.
Yes.
And I keep the story going. I keep the life story going to say, yes, Jackie was here. Jackie did this. And it was important. Jackie
mattered. Jackie mattered.
Jackie mattered because he was on the front page or in every publication, including the New York Times, Vogue magazine at the time.
All of it.
And it was a very, very important time in New York history in the downtown underground below 14th Street. You see. So he was the superstar below 14th Street. Everybody knew who he was, and he knew everybody else.
Right. And you know what? You're keeping it going. I do one little fun thing before my guests say goodbye. I like to take pictures on the computer. So just look at me and say cheese.
Cheese.
Joe, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Besides being a dear friend of mine, from the time I met you, I got what you were doing with the memory of Jackie Curtis, because it's not just a memory. These incredible people, if we don't continue to carry it forward, carry the flame, you're right, they will be forgotten, or worse than that, history will be rewritten. And we know people who are doing that. That's not okay, right? You're out there. You have the truth. The book is Warhol Superstar, Jackie Curtis Undressed, a memoir by Joey Preston. You can get it on Amazon. It's available now. It is a very entertaining read. I have to tell you the stories. I found myself crazily laughing to myself, and I was totally entertained. Thank you.
And thank you. I can't thank you enough for helping me continue Jackie's legacy.
Oh yeah, and for our audience, there's going to be more. Joe is going to be doing book signings. We've got things planned for the spring, so stay tuned. You'll see things on my site on Facebook, Wendy Stewart, and you can see Joe Preston on Facebook. We want everyone to follow along with the Pied Piper. That's what it's about. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.